Hello and welcome to this video on percentage increase and decrease. I'm going to use a mixture of both calculator and non-calculator methods in this video because the rules apply to both methods. So I like to think about percentage increase and decrease using diagrams. So if you look at this diagram for percentage increase, you can see that you have got the original amount here, 100%, and you are adding on a given percentage, in this case, X%. So it's really important that you can visualize this percentage increase like this, because in a moment we are going to be using multipliers to do these percentage increases and indeed decreases later on in the video. So if you are increasing by, for example, 20%, you would multiply your original amount by 1.20. Now, why do you do this for an increase of 20%? Because, as you can see in your diagram here, you want the original amount, and that's what that 1 is. That 1 is your original amount, and you want the 20% too. So that is what you would multiply your amount by. So whatever your amount is, if you are increasing it by 20%, you need to multiply it by 1.20, because I want the original amount, the 1, and the 20%. If I am increasing by 35%, you would multiply by 1.35. Because of course 35% of the decimal is 0.35, if I'm doing an increase of 35%, I want 1.35. So let's have a look at that in some examples. So example number 1, it says increase 900 by 20%. So there are several ways you can do this. I'm going to show you a few different ways. So you can do the multiplier method like we've just looked at. So you can do 900, that's the original amount, and I'm increasing it by 20%, so I want to multiply by 1.20 because I want that 900 and I want 20% more. So I can do 900 multiplied by 1.20. Okay, so how can I do that? Well, I'm going to make this easier for myself. This is 9 multiplied by 100, essentially, and multiplied by 1.2. And if I actually do these two calculations, 100 multiplied by 1.2, I will actually end up with this calculation, 9 multiplied by 120. And I know that 9 12s are 108. So I reckon, because of that extra 0, my answer is going to be 1080. So there we are, I've increased 900 by 20% using a multiplier like this. And it's quite friendly. This one's quite a friendly example, so you can break it down a bit like I've done here. 900 is 9 multiplied by 100, and then just do this calculation here to give you your 120, because I want to get rid of the decimal if I can, and then you can work this out mentally. But if it was any other multiplier or a slightly more challenging number than 900, and we'll see some more of those in a second, you can of course use any longer written method of multiplication that you know. Another way, equally fine, is to work out 10%. So 10% is always a good starting point for percentage questions. So 10% of 900 is of course 90, because we're dividing by 10. So you can do this calculation, 10% of 900 is 90, and you can therefore multiply it by 2 to get 20%. So 20% of 900 multiplied by 2 is 180. And that's 20%, but I want an increase. So increasing 900 by 20%. So I'm going to do a sum, a bit like you saw in the diagram at the beginning here. So I've got my 900, this is like my 900 now in that example. And I am adding on the 180 that I've just found. So the 180 there is what I've just found here. So adding on 180, and you can see that you will get the same number as we've got over there on the left hand side, 1080. So that is the answer, 1080, using two different methods. Okay, example number 2, increase 65 by 40%. So I'm going to do the calculation 65 multiplied by 1.40. And you can use a written method of multiplication if it's on the non-calculated paper. If it is on a calculated paper, you can simply put that straight into your calculator and you will get the answer. So let's do a written method. I'm going to do, this time I'm going to do the box method. So I'm going to draw a box like this. I'm going to make it a complete square because I can see I'm going to have 2 digits by 2 digits. I'm going to ignore that 0 because that's just going to add extra complications. So I'm going to use this method to do it on this occasion. This is a written method of multiplication. If you are not familiar with this, then you should watch the video on multiplying decimals. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put 65 here, and I'm just going to put 14 here. I'm not even going to worry myself about the decimal. I can see it's 1.4, so my estimate, well, it's going to be a bit more than 65, because obviously it's 1.4 lots of 65. I reckon it'll be pretty obvious where the decimal point goes in the end. So I'm just taking the digits 1 and 4 from there, and I'm just doing my multiplication here like this. So 5 multiplied by 1 is just 5. 5 multiplied by 4 is 20. 1 multiplied by 6 is 6. And 6 multiplied by 4 is 24. Adding along my diagonals. So adding along here and here, here, and here. Let's add up those columns, those diagonals I should say. So that's just 0. That is 11, so put a 1 there and carry the tens part of the 11 there, so that number there is 11, because 5 plus 4 plus 2 is 11. And then I've got 0 plus 6 plus 2, that's 8, plus that 1 is 9. I'm going to write a big 9, and remember that that 1 was just carried, so it's not in your final answer. And then So the digits of my answer are 910. Okay, that was just the carried one there. So I know that my answer is going to be more than 65, but it's not going to be 910, it's going to be 91. So if this is on a non-calculated paper, then you could do this. If it's on a calculated paper, you can simply type 65 multiplied by 1.4 into your calculator and get 91. Okay, increase 5.9 by 70%. I'm just going to do this on the calculator. So how would you do this on the calculator? You'd do 5.9 and you would multiply it by 1.70 and you get 10.03. 10.03. Always check to see if your answer looks reasonable as well. So yeah, if I'm increasing that by 70%, 10.03 seems reasonable. Okay, example 4, increase 382 by 15%. So I'm going to do 382 and I'm going to multiply it by 1.15. 1.15. If it's on a calculated paper, then you're lucky and you can just put it into a calculator. If you're on a non-calculated paper, then you need to think about using a written method. So again, I'm going to draw a nice square here because I can see I've got a 3 by 3 multiplication, which if you use column could get quite difficult. So I think I'm just going to stick to the diagonal method because I've got lots of digits here. 3 by 3 on a column could get quite challenging. So I think I'm just going to use the diagonal method here. So this is how we set it up. As I say, I have done a video on this. If you need to recap this method, then watch the multiplying decimals videos. So my 382 goes here and my 115 goes down here. I'm not even going to worry about that decimal point because I think I can estimate it's going to be in roughly around 400. So let's have a look. So 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2 here. Make that 2 a little bit more clear. 0, 2, ooh, not even like that. Pen's got a mind of its own today. 0, 2. 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 8 is 8 again. And 8 times 5 is 40. 3 ones are 3. 3 ones are 3. And 3 fives are 15. And on the diagonals, I've got 0, 0 here, 3 here, 19 here, carry the little 1, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 here, and 4 there. So my digits are 4, 3, 9, 3, 0. Well, if I'm increasing 382 by 15%, I reckon it's not going to be 43,930. It's not going to be 4,393. I reckon it's going to be 439.30. Example 5, increase 620 by 85%. I'm going to do this one on my calculator. What would be the calculation? It would be 620 multiplied by 1, because we're increasing by 85%, 1.85. And if you put that into your calculator, you would get 1,147. Okay, percentage decrease. What does this mean for multipliers? Well, if you've got your full amount here and you are decreasing by a given amount, let's say you are decreasing by 20%, so you're taking off 20%. Well, what does that actually mean you are left with? You are left with 80%. So you are actually multiplying, you're going to multiply by what you have left, because you actually want, if you're doing a 20% decrease, you want 80% of your original amount. So the multiplier is basically the decimal that you would have to add to whatever your decrease is in order to be able to get back to 100. So if you're decreasing by 20%, then 80% takes you back up to that 100%. That is what you are multiplying by, because that is what you are essentially left with. If you do a 20% decrease, you're left with 80% of your original amount. So that is the multiplier that you would use. If you were decreasing by 35%, what are you left with? Well, you are left with 65% of your original amount. So that is what your multiplier is, 0.65. So you can see that 65 and 35 together make 100. Okay, let's have a look at that in some examples. So example 6, decrease 300 by 20%. So if I'm decreasing, remember it is a multiplier, it's still a multiplier. Lots of people think because it's decrease it's divide. No, it's still a multiplier. If I'm decreasing by 20%, remember I want to find 80% of my original amount. So my multiplier is 0, not 1 this time because I'm not increasing, I'm decreasing. Decreasing by 20%, which means I want to find 80% of my original amount. So let's do what we did in the first example. 300 is 3 multiplied by 100, and I'm multiplying that by 0.8. And if I do 0.80 multiplied by 100, if I do this calculation here, I am left with 80. And then 3 multiplied by 80 gives me 240. You could, of course, do it a different way. You could find 10% of 300, which of course is 30. Sorry, it's my pen that is causing a little bit of an issue here. So 10% of 300, which is 30, excuse my writing here, so I know it's not the neatest. Double that to get to 20%, which of course is 60, and then you can subtract from your original amount. So you can do 300, take away that 60, and that of course leaves you with 240. which is the answer we've got over there on the left. So that is two non-calculator methods for doing a percentage decrease. Decrease 452 by 40%. So if we're decreasing by 40%, that is the same as finding 60% of that amount. So my multiplier is 0.60. Remember, those two numbers have to add up to 100. So I'm going to ignore my decimals and I'm going to do a written method of multiplication here. I'm just going to say 452, let's do the column here, 452, and I'm going to multiply it by 6. I'm going to worry about my decimals later. So let's do this. I've just taken the 6 from there. I'm going to worry about the decimals a bit later on. So 2 6s are 12, 5 6s are 30, plus that 1 is 31. 4 6s are 24, plus 3 is 27. So what do I reckon my answer is? Well, if my original number was 452, then the only reasonable number there would be 271.2. Okay, example 8, decrease 5 by 70%. So if I'm decreasing 5 by 70%, I'm essentially finding 30% of that original amount. So there, 70 and 30 add together to 100. So if I'm decreasing by 70%, I'm finding 30% of that original amount. So if you are on a calculator paper, you could just put this straight into your calculator. If it's non-calculator, you can do a written method. Here you can see that 5 times 3 is 15. So therefore, if I'm decreasing 5 by 70%, that's the same as finding 30% of 5, and 30% of 5 is just 1.5. Okay, I've got 5 times 3, which I've done in my head, obviously, which is 15, and then I've decided where the decimal point is, thinking about the fact that it's just 5 that we're starting off with. Think about what the sensible positioning for that decimal point, and it would be 1.5. Example 9, decrease 760 by 35. So 760 multiplied by, well, what is left? If I do a decrease of 35%, that means I'm actually finding 65% of my original amount. And as I say, if you were lucky enough to have this on a calculator paper, you could use your calculator. If it is on a non-calculator paper, use a written method, such as the diagonal one, like this, or the column. And I'm going to ignore the 0 there. I'm going to ignore the 0 there, and I'm just going to say 76 multiplied by 65. 6 6s, oh, that 5 is not ideal. 65, so 6 6s are 36. 6 5s are 30. 7 6s are 42. 7 5s are 35. Add along your diagonals, 0. 14. Oops. 9 and 4. 4940. If it's decreasing 760 by 35%, I reckon my final answer is going to be 494.0. Okay, example 10, final example. It says decrease 42 by 85%. So I'm going to do 42 multiplied by 0.15, because if I'm decreasing by 85%, I'm basically finding 15% of the remaining amount. And if this is on a non-calculator paper, obviously do this as a written method, but if you're lucky enough to have it on a calculator paper, then you just need to do 42 multiplied by 0.15 on your calculator, and you would get 6.3. 6.3 is your answer to that question. Okay, here are some questions for you to have a go at. So pause the video now, have a go at these, and then you can resume the video to see the answers. And here are the answers. Very well done for having a go at those.